Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for registering for our webinar tonight. And yes, we are waiting for the other registrants to join in as well. So please give us a few minutes before we can start the webinar. Yeah?
Hello, everyone. My name is Desmond. I'm a licensed immigration advisor and the founder of Global Migration Solutions. And thank you for joining us this evening. Well, every year, this is an important moment for us because in the migration industry, this is when the budget and the migration planning tell us what kind of migrant, the Australia wants and where the government is heading. Yeah. And honestly, over the last few years, we see so many changes and different directions, quite a bit. Yeah. And Australia is becoming more selective. Yeah. So tonight, I just want to share some key highlights and go through some of the changes, and not just the visa number and the planning level, but also on what these changes actually mean to you if you are a student, if you are a professional, right? Or if you are a business owner or an investor, for example, right? And including those family member and planning to obtain a PR in Australia. So hopefully by the end of this session, you will have, a picture of where the opportunities are and how to plan more strategically, moving forwards. Okay, so let's look into that. Uh, Okay, let me just move my slide. Okay, so in this session, I'm going to share about the latest planning or the latest migration budget, which was recently announced. Okay, and then I'm going to talk about what is the direction and what the Australian government is introducing and what you're expecting to see, for this new fiscal year, starting July 2026 till June 2027. Now, first of all, let's talk about the planning level. So every year, the Australia governments set a number on how many application permanent residency application that can be approved in a year, right? And the same number goes to this new fiscal year, so which is 185,000. Out of this, more than 70% goes to the skill stream. And under this skill stream, it consists of the general skill migration. It consists of the employer sponsored. It consists of the National Innovative Visa, a very special category of the skill migration and extension of the skill migration visa, all goes under the skill stream. And you can see out of the 185,000, right, this is a strong focus out of the total. Then we have the family stream. 52,000, slightly more than 52,000 are being allocated for the family stream. And which visa programs comes under the family stream, right? For example, parents visa, partner visa, child visa. These are the programs that comes under the family stream. Then we have a small number for the special category of the visa. For example, those PR who might have lost the PR status for a specific reason. We have the remaining family members visa programs, for example. So all this comes under the special category of the visa. So I guess from here we can tell very clearly where is the direction, right, of the Australian government's for this fiscal year, for this coming fiscal year, right? It is going to be focused a lot on the skill and the employer sponsored. Okay. Now, based upon what was being announced, I see the biggest winner or the biggest quota goes to the employer sponsored. And that taken up 31% of the total planning level. All right. So over the years, especially over the last 2 to 3 years, right, we have seen the government has placed a lot or put in a lot of efforts to educate the employer to consider sponsoring the non-PR and non-citizen. And for example, we've seen various states government putting so much of efforts educating the employer on what the requirements are, right? Letting them know the options of helping and assisting the workers to obtain a visa that gives them rights to work and fill up the skill shortages. And we have seen the efforts continuing. Yeah. So when we talk about this employer-sponsored visa, as you can see, more than 58,000 places are being allocated. Now, for those who may not be very familiar with what the employer-sponsored visa is, you may hear, go and find out this 482 visa, 186 visa, both representing the employer-sponsored visa pathway. 482 starts with a temporary residence visa, with 2 years later, a transition into a PR, whereas 186 is a visa programs that offer you a direct permanent residency status upon the visa approval. So I would suggest that you go to our YouTube, find out more information, because we have many sharings in our social media, in our YouTube, with regards to these two visa program. Now, one thing I personally like about this employer-sponsored visa is, these programs comes with a job offer, but of course, I guess the challenge has always been finding the right employer sponsoring you, right? That says, this is the first obstacle that you need to get through. Unlike the next visa that we're going to talk about, the general skill migration visa, which generally doesn't require you to have a job offer, whereas this employer sponsored would require you to, be offered a job. All right. Now, I can see the Australian government give a lot of weightage, to the migrants, and to make sure that they ties directly to a workforce shortage. What does that mean? They want to make sure, if you're getting a PR in Australia, you are there, to work, and not there to tap into just, the privilege of the PR. Okay? So we have seen changes like this adopted by the current Labour government. So the future strategy is not just only the point system, but it is going to be focusing a lot on which company is going to be able to sponsor you and whether or not you're connected to them. All right. Now, next, we're going to look at the second important programs, which is the General Skill Migration Program. And the first options under the General Skill Migration Program is the subclass 189 Skill Independent Visa. This is one of the very popular program, and we have seen also a higher allocation onto these programs. It has gone up to 21,000 places from last year, from the current fiscal year of 16,900. Yeah, which is ending the current fiscal year is ending next month. And although this program is very competitive, if you are, for example, if you are a teacher, you are a medical practitioner, you are an engineer, you are IT professional, then you would be suitable to apply under this visa. One of the very unique requirement about this visa is you have to have a strong point. Yeah, when we talk about strong points, that refers to at least 90 point or even higher to stand a chance to be invited to apply for this subclass 189 visa. Okay. We have seen very stringent requirements, very competitive condition on this 189 visa. And the government has also set the priority sector, for example, healthcare, which includes nurses, uh, doctors, for example. Then you have education sector, for example, special needs teacher, early childhood teacher, uh, and school teacher, for example, and the construction sector. If you are architect, you are civil engineer, you're quantity surveyor, for example, or you are, a cost estimator, for example. These are the priority sector that are given the priority. So their application is going to be processed quicker than any other occupation. So I would expect this sector to be continued for the next fiscal year and getting the priority attention or the processing, right? So the key point here is, remember, under this visa class, you have to have a strong point, high point to be invited. All right. And the results of each selections is being announced in the DHA website. You can refer to the website, look at your nominated occupation, and do a comparison of your point against what points are being invited. From there, you'll be able to gauge whether or not you stand a chance to be invited. All right, now, 190 visa, this is a programs that require the state's government to offer you a nomination. These programs continue to receive, an attention in this new fiscal year. And the planning level for these programs went up, going up to 35,500 places from 33,000. Okay. That says, the state's governments are given the specific quota allocated by the federal government uh, to to plan on the different occupation depending on the needs of the respective states, and they will have to decide. The state's government will have to decide what is the criteria, what are the occupation they are going to sponsor or nominate. Yeah. So it is interesting as expected. I don't think this is a surprise. Yeah, the state's government 190 has always been one of the very important programs for federal government and the state's government for many years. And so we're going to find out soon, in generally the respective states government, when they receive the allocation from the federal government, usually at the end of the first quarter or the beginning of the second quarter, they will start to open up the application for submission. Yeah, and that would be the times when they would announce what would be the specific requirements. For example, they might be in favor for those who has a higher English. They might be favoring for those who is a graduate of the respective states. For example, South Australia and Western Australia, they have they have the nomination specifically for a graduate of the states. They might be looking at someone who is young, for example. So we're going to find out, and I would expect that the state's government is going to set the requirements and the policy align with the overall direction of the new fiscal year. Okay, let's have a look at the next programs, which is the subclass 491 and 494. This is a regional program. And when we talk about regional programs, basically these are the programs that has been around for a long, long time, which encourage the migrants to reside in the regional area effectively, which is 50 kilometers outside the central CBD. But interestingly, we see a drop in the planning level. So for a long, long time, the governments of Australia uh, encourage the migrants to reside in the regional area and to help to fill up the job shortages. Yeah, the yeah. But this is the very first time we see the planning level for these regional programs drop to 14,000 from 33,000. So it's almost cut by half. So this is very interesting. That says if you are considering, if you are still thinking, studying in the regional area or residing in the regional area, which may help you to secure a state nomination, you should start paying attention to what is going to be the criteria of the 491 visa, for example. Yeah, once the state's government has announced the criteria. Yeah. So make sure that you do not plan wrongly at the wrong direction, thinking that you might be getting, the nomination easily by residing in the regional area or by studying in the regional area. Circumstances might have changed after this, announcement of the direction. Okay. So my recommendation or the advice here is, should focus on, any other programs. Again, back to what we have just gone through, employer sponsored visa, for example. If you are already residing in a regional area, already on the employment, do take an opportunity to have a discussion with your employer, to find out how open are they, how supportive are they towards your, the visa by sponsoring you. Yeah, through the 482 visa or the 186 visa. Okay. Yeah. So this is, my advice on this particular visa programs, 491. National Innovative Visa, which is one of the visa programs under the General Skill Migration. Although out of the total, the planning level and the quota being allocated to this particular program is 3,500. It is very interesting because this is, a visa that targets on if you are the top of your field. For example, if you receive international awards, you own the patents, you are a researcher, for example, and you have the exceptional talent, you are exceptional talents. And here, for example, if you are a doctor, and being a doctor itself is not great enough, but if you are a doctor and you have involved in the research and the development and have came up with some medical techniques, a new technology, for example, and these are typically what this program is looking for. Do take notes. These programs, NIV, is not a replacement of the old program, business and innovation investment, business innovation investment program, subclass 188. So do take note, this NIV is not a replacement of that 188 program. Yeah. So that says you have to, in order for you to be considered for the one NIV, you have to meet the criteria of the NIV. So by running a business, having a successful business experience is not good enough. Okay. Now, talking about that, since the cancellation of the business and investment program 2 years ago, and there isn't any replacement of the business and innovation program. So the budgets, the announcement has reconfirmed that. So we don't expect any programs on the business and investment programs to be introduced for the fiscal year 2026 to 2027. Those who has filed the application and before the program was closed will be continued to be processed. Having said that, they are sharing the same planning level, which is a 3,005 that is being allocated, under this category. Yeah, they are sharing the same pool as an NIV. So we are expecting, given that, we are expecting a much slower processing for those who has already filed the application. This could be very disappointing. I personally think that, the Australian government could have done better. Those clients or those applicants who has filed the application under business and investment program were filing their application thinking that the application processing time was less than 2 years, but now it has gone up to 5 years, 6 years. And with a reduction and a sharing of 3,005 planning level with the NIV, I can't imagine how worse it can go further. So this is very disappointing. I think the Australian government can do better. But nonetheless, at the same time, the New Zealand government has introduced and reduced the requirement of the business and investment visa program. The New Zealand government kind of take over the role, and uh and there are a lot of the people started to swift over to the New Zealand, and the programs of New Zealand, which was introduced last year on the 1st of April, has so far been very, very successful. And from the financial perspective, I think billions of dollars has gone into New Zealand, and keep an eye, and do a little bit of research. If you are, a business owner, you are thinking to obtain a PR through the business investment, or you are investor, with, the financial means, do pay attention to, the New Zealand business and investment program, which I find it very attractive. All right. Now, let's also look into the student's visa. The current direction and the budgets has also touched on the student's visa. As expected, we have seen the Australia student visa was getting a lot more stringent, more stricter application review process. Certain changes and was being introduced over the last 2 years. For example, if you are past 35 years old, you are going to study in Australia, you do not get a chance to apply for a graduate visa after completed your study. Yeah, that says you're going to be below 35 years old. Things like this was being introduced on the student's visa, that stops those who pass 35 years old to be able to continue to stay back after finishing the study. Yeah. So as expected this year, I think it is not going to be easy for students' visa. You got to be a genuine student. You got to meet the temporary the GTE, genuine temporary entrance, meaning to say you need to demonstrate after finishing your study, you have a genuine intentions to leave Australia. These criteria are all going to be considered as part of the student visa application process. All right. So let's look into the general skill migration reform directions. So general skill migration programs comes with a point test system. The Australian government is looking at the point test system, trying to introduce changes, and they are going to place an importance for those who is younger, yeah, who has the right skill and the expertise, yeah, and they are going to also place the importance on the background of the education of the candidates to make sure that this is in line, the backgrounds and the education of the candidates is in line with the direction, the economy directions for Australia. So these are the few key factors that they are considering. And other than that, they will value the Australian work experience potentially. They continue to place an importance on the English level. And they also place an importance on those who completes who is under the science and technology and mathematics stream. Importantly, they are also going to link up or place an importance on those candidates who secured a job, for example, right? So for many years, I have been telling clients, the Australian doesn't require, one thing nice about general skill migration for Australia has always been you do not need a job offer. So you can apply based upon, your background, your qualification, your experience, and that is good enough for you to obtain, the PR without having a job offer. But I think with these directions, very soon we're going to see how the programs will factor in. For example, for those candidates who secured a job, and how this is going to be a difference than the candidate who doesn't have a job, right? I would expect, those candidates who are able to demonstrate that a job offer from the employer, from the Australian employer, is going to have, an advantage throughout the application. Now, how fast is this going to be implemented? It is currently the Australian government is reviewing. It is at the research and the development phase. It is expected to be as late as end of this year, for the governments to introduce the revised point system. And it is going to be very interesting. We are going to find out how this new system or the new point system would support the general skill migration programs moving forwards. Okay. Yeah, well, I guess another important directions that has set for by the Australian government is for on those onshore candidates as versus offshore candidates. Higher quota are given to the onshore candidates. So that says if you are a graduate, you're below 35 years old, you secure after finishing your study, you secure a graduate visa. And being onshore probably, gives you an advantage as compared to an offshore candidates. All right. My advice now, given all this direction and all this information that's being announced by the Australian government, what I wanted to assure everyone here is Australia is not and never closed down the migration program. All right. It is a country that's being built, surrounded by the migrants, and this will continue. However, we are expecting the programs becoming a lot more competitive, more stringent, and the government is going to be more selective on the right candidates, on the strongest candidates. So if you are a candidate that has already been built, with the experience, with the right qualification, then Australia could be a choice for you. But if you are a candidate that you're in the process or in the journey of building up your background, your skill, for example, then I think New Zealand is much more friendlier, and New Zealand has a lot more has a more structured programs and the pathway towards the PR. Okay. Now, employer sponsorship is now one of the best pathway. If you can find a job, or that says, the employee is more open, with offering a sponsorship, do pay attention and make an effort to, to get in touch with the potential employer who may potentially offering you a sponsorship. That really helps, in terms of your PR pathway. Onshore candidates, again, just to summarize, if you're onshore, I think, this gives you some advantage on the coming up changes. Yeah. And so we have seen fundamentally things change. It is no longer, a program that doesn't require to obtain a job. Yeah, so that is not good enough. So job seems to be, very important factors, moving forwards. Right now, I'm taking this opportunity to also share about the New Zealand upcoming changes on the New Zealand programs, especially for those who is planning to study in New Zealand. Good news to you, comes August, if you're looking at studying in New Zealand, that gives you a very clear pathway and a clear structure towards your PR in New Zealand. Okay. So as a comparison, for example, if you were to choose to study in Australia, you would then need to spend 2 years or 4 semesters and complete your study in Australia for you to be able to entitle to a graduate visa, and that provided you're below 35 years old. All right. New Zealand, on the other hand, 30 hours, weeks of study, would then qualify you for a 3 years post-study work visa. That says, you would then be able to secure, a visa that allow you to continue to stay back, regardless of whether you're below 35 or above 35, right? You would then have this post-study work visa to stay back and work in New Zealand. And then from there, once you have gotten a job offer, that actually speed up the application process and your eligibility towards the residency pathway. All right. Now, for those who is planning for a master degree, now, when you are doing the master degree, once you have finished your master study, then that gives you the full 6 points as required for your PR application through the Skilled Migrants Category Program, even without additional work experience. By virtue of you completing, the master study, that gives you a very direct and clear pathway towards the PR. And just for your information, you can basically complete your master degree as quickly as 1 year in New Zealand. Yeah, and if you have a choice to complete this master degree in university, which generally costs you about 32 to 35,000 New Zealand dollar. Or if you can also consider to choose to complete your master degree from the non-university, for example, polytechnics. And the school fee could be below, 30,000 on average, for example, 25,000 New Zealand dollar. So I personally think that this is a very good opportunity for those who plan to study and just complete your master degree, in New Zealand. By doing so, your spouse do have a right visa, gives your spouse the full work rights to be able to work full time. And during your master study, your child is enjoying the full education benefits for primary and secondary school. All right. So this is a very interesting, a very completely, very different program as compared to Australia. So find out more, do a little bit of research, or contact us, and we will equip you with all the information. All right. Another interesting point, I guess, to highlight for New Zealand is, the age of the dependent child is up to 23 years, up to 24 years old, as long as they're below 25. As compared to Australia, age of dependent child is up to 22 years old. Another interesting point, being a New Zealand PR, it is for life without the need to renew it every 5 years. Whether you live in New Zealand or you do not live in New Zealand, the PR stays with you for lifetime. Okay? Yeah, so I find this very interesting, and I thought to take this as an opportunity to share with every one of you, who joined us tonight. Okay, so this is a quick updates from me from Global Migration with regards to the migration planning and the direction of the Australian government's on this coming new fiscal year. If you are looking at getting an advice from us, do contact us. You may scan this barcode and stay with us on our social media, which we give a regular updates to reach out to us and to get access individually. You can call us or you can email us, and we are happy to get you through. So last, thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. Again, my name is Desmond from Global Migration Solutions. And have a good evening and take care, everyone. Okay, bye-bye.